Okay, this is a really simple social enterprise. 8,000 years ago, around half the world was covered by trees. That's not the case anymore. This social enterprise exists to basically plant trees. This has three benefits. I mean, it has many other benefits, but let's give you three. Number one, it employs local people in some of the most deprived parts of the world. The pilot project that my friend who founded this enterprise employs 300 people in Sri Lanka, an area previously troubled by conflict, which is another one. You get lots of conflict when you have poor people. And the third benefit, which is one of the revenue streams, is obviously planting trees sucks up carbon dioxide. If we're going to solve climate change, forests are a key part of the problem. One of the reasons this is particularly interesting is that this has almost unlimited potential when you consider how much of the world used to have trees and how much it currently does.
Gideon, you have done me a huge favor.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
You have pitched the social. You forgot to pitch the enterprise. I'm an investor, remember? If you want me to help save the planet, great, then you're a charity. You just told me all the reasons how you're going to benefit the world. No problem. Now, social enterprise is a very, very tricky subject. I believe in social enterprise. I believe it profoundly. But let's start with some definitional terms to make sure you and I agree, and then we can see how we advance you so that you are as attractive to investors as you possibly can be. Agreed? Item one. A social enterprise, the word social modifies enterprise. Therefore, it starts with being an enterprise. You must make a surplus, i.e. a profit before distribution, because nobody is interested in sharing a loss, right? I've got some extra losses. Anybody want some? It doesn't work. If you're going to be a social enterprise and a successful one, therefore you have to be a profitable business that chooses to take that profit and put it to a specific use, usually one. There are frequently ancillary benefits as well, and I acknowledge that. But usually, just as you actually are, a reasonably focused activity. You've got a specific intent. The intent is presumably to reduce, to help the issue of carbon. I'll let you phrase it better than I just did. But what you haven't told me anything about is the enterprise, in the social enterprise. Okay. So I want you to do it again.
It's real simple.
I want you to do it again. Same 30 seconds. Go.
Well, the only thing I need to add to everything you just heard is that the trees produce things that make money, like latex or cocoa. So they produce substantial revenue streams. And then depending on what happens in international carbon markets, there's a second revenue stream which is a bit more risky and you're taking a gamble on, is the value of the carbon produced from the trees.
But you're not the first person to make latex or cocoa. There's people who commercially run tree farms all over the world for the very specific intent of doing that without benefiting anybody socially. Therefore, there's an incumbent, competitive world. No? So what makes you so special?
Well, you are right. My friend Bremley, who had the vision for this company, is an experienced person working with governments and other NGOs. He has persuaded people in Sri Lanka to give him the land for free.
Aha, we now have an advantage. No, that's fine, but you see, if you're going to start, your pitch is getting better now, but we should start there. We're going to run a more competitive latex and cocoa producing tree plantation because we get the land for free and the competition doesn't, and because we do, we are able to put ourselves in a higher profit position and therefore return this back to whatever social purpose. And by the way, what is the social purpose?
Well, there's multiple social purpose. One, it's very good for the local community.
Well, but it would be good for the local community even if you were just a for-profit business.
Correct.
How is it? What makes it a social enterprise in this instance?
No, correct. One of the interesting things here is that for-profit money can also benefit all the same objectives because the returns are probably good enough to share out, which is one of the reasons that we're interested in scaling this, because obviously you can probably get a lot more money into the same area if you have multiple income streams, some of which you expect to get back, some of which you expect to just plough the money into good causes, and some of which is essentially charitably given.
I'm not sure I understood.
Okay.
Are you taking... And the great thing is I'm so confident in myself. If I don't understand, I actually think it's your fault. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I know. It's a level of arrogance. It's almost breathtaking. I appreciate that. Are you taking the profits you make from a business that has got, I appreciate, a quite potentially considerable advantage because the land costs, I suspect, are a huge portion of this thing, and redistributing those profits back in a way that is not to the investors, rather to some other purpose?
Well, one condition of getting the land is that 10% of the money for this particular project must stay in Sri Lanka. So that is going back into the community that gave a 30-year lease on the land.
Going back, so the money is actually distributed, it's actually gifted back into the community?
We have some freedom for manoeuvre as to exactly how we donate it, and obviously we want to do it to the best possible cause.
That's fine.
To benefit, but that is part of the economics of the project, is that you give up some of the revenues to the community that gives you the land.
10% of the revenue or 10% of the profit?
Sorry?
I'm sorry, I thought you said 10% of the profit.
Well, the
Is
way
it
it works is
10%
it
of the
costs
revenue or
almost,
10% of the profit?
it costs almost nothing to plant them. So it's all about the revenues.
So the land is free, it costs us almost nothing to plant them. Presumably it takes a number of years for them to grow before you can harvest, so there's a waiting period.
Yeah, 5 or 6 before any show up, so it's not for the short-term investor.
And the investors get because this is a social enterprise, and I'm puzzled a bit over that in fairness, the investors get a full return or a partial return?
Well, I think it depends on the investor.
Okay, so let's say I don't believe in global warming, but like to make a lot of money.
Okay.
What's the highest level of return?
Possibly 35%.
I'm sorry? How much?
35%.
35% per what? Every year, or 35% in
The
total?
IRR.
I'm sorry?
The IRR.
The IRR. Okay, that's high.
Yeah.
That means basically the equivalent of better than 35% a year, actually, because IRR it nets out a lot. That's good. That's.
But on the other hand, this is higher risk than a bank account.
Everything is higher risk than a bank account, except bank accounts have gotten nominally high risk. And they have a different issue. They have an absence of reward. You put your money in the bank, and it doesn't make anything. It's a real bother. Let's talk about that later. You're promising people 35% IRR.
We promise them nothing. And a fool would promise people 35% IRR.
I'm sorry?
A
fool would promise 35%
You can't
IRR.
promise people up front that sort of return.
Fine. Every entrepreneur who asks for an investment makes an assertion as to what potential for return there is, and in fact, what likely return there is. Do they not?
Nope.
They don't.
Sorry?
They don't. In other words, I'm an investor in your opportunity. I got £1 million I want to put in. I would reasonably ask you, what return should I expect? Are you telling me you don't have a return model? You do have a return model.
We do have a return
What
model.
does the return model show?
It depends on the price assumptions you make for latex, cocoa, and the carbon credits.
That would be what your sensitivity analysis demonstrates.
Absolutely.
Fine.
But if you understand all these things, which we would hope to be our investor, you would understand that probably you're looking at least a 50-20% return.
Okay.
But
what I find how's the money raising going?
sorry?
How is the money raising going?
At the moment, my friend has pursued a strategy of essentially charitable raising with some large private donations. But what the pilot project has revealed is this is a relatively straightforward thing to do once you've got the land. The potential to scale this is huge. So therefore, we're interested in possibly developing other ways of doing it.
I.e. commercially.
Yeah, it might be good for an institutional investor with a long time frame.
Yeah,
As part of
I
our
absolutely
portfolio.
agree. You want somebody who does not mind alternative assets and therefore does not mind the inherent illiquidity of that kind of position in their portfolio, and alternative assets have been a bit frowned upon in the last couple of years. Alternative assets mean assets you can't sell, by the way. It's just a nice way of phrasing it. So if you invest in it, you're stuck until you get out. It's nothing to do with you. This is just the entire category. And you are squarely in that, of course. I have to admit, you stand between two things right now. And I think you've got a choice to make. You can either present yourself for commercial return, or you can present yourself as a truly social activity. But you just presented it today, even when you presented the commercial one, the latter one, as it's not clear to me who the audience was. Now that may be intentional on your part, and that's fine, because you're obviously intelligent. But I would ask you, if you are presenting to an investor, that you differentiate the return from the then social benefit, because most investors in social enterprises are looking for a return and are actually willing to take a suboptimal return so long as they know that the margin of lesser return is directly tied to the social benefit. And I think that would be the case you would want to make. If you can do both, cake and eat it too, all the better for you, Gideon. I'd be very interested to see how you progress. 35% IRR? Just enough to make a man want to talk to you.